All right, welcome everybody to our read through of the Call of the Divine Beloved, which we will be probably take several weeks, if not a few months, to get through. We'll see how the speed goes. This is a very, very special volume of Baha'u'llah's writings. Special. Well, in one way, it's not special because the majority of it by page count, the 7 valleys and the 4 valleys, has existed in a previous translation. And what we have in this new volume are revised translations of the 7 valleys and the 4 valleys. And in addition, a few additional works of Baha'u'llah, which have not before been seen in English, and which give extra context and fill out the picture more of this topic of the mystical quest. What for me makes the volume exceptionally special is the presence at the beginning of it of the first surviving work of Baha'u'llah, the Rashi al-Ma, or the as it's been translated, the clouds of the realms above, which was revealed by Baha'u'llah while he was in the prison of the Siachal in Tehran for several months, probably in late 1852. And the work, the new volume opens with this beautiful but really impossible to translate poem. But before we get into the Rashi al-Ma, and I wanted to spend most of today going through this poem, really line by line, with reference to the Persian, maybe to introduce a little bit more the volume itself, because one can think of this volume in perhaps in the most obvious sense as a manual for the spiritual quest, along the lines of manuals for spiritual journey that have been written over the centuries by people from all the great faith traditions of the world, of the East and the West. But there's something else going on in this volume. There's a second message. It's almost as though Baha'u'llah is broadcasting on two frequencies simultaneously. He's at one and the same time recapitulating these timeless elements of the spiritual journey, which one will find, I think, familiar. Whatever religious tradition one comes from, there will be familiar elements in it. At the same time, Baha'u'llah is writing these works, in some cases 10 years prior to his more public declaration of his own prophetic mission. And so these works all represent a period of time prior to Baha'u'llah's being known among those with whom he was conversing and those with whom he was in contact. None of these people knew the prophetic secret that he himself carried. And so these works are ostensibly written by at most a prominent member of the Baha'i community. But what he is also delivering to us, and it's only possible to see these things in hindsight, is he's also hinting to those who have the ear to hear it. He's hinting at his own prophetic mission, which will become public later. What Baha'u'llah is doing, in a way, I think, is negotiating a certain problem, a certain intractable problem with written words, and this intractable problem was first mentioned actually by Plato, going back 2,500 years or so. And the problem with words is that not just words, but the written word, is that you can't control your audience. And that's a big difference between, you might think, well, the spoken word and the written word are just two versions of the same thing. But the spoken word is fundamentally different in that you always know to whom you're speaking. If you're having a conversation, if you're speaking in a group, you can adjust what you're saying to the audience, to the hearer. And behind this, of course, is the assumption that not everybody needs to hear the same thing. Not everyone is in a position or has the capacity or has, and when it comes to most of the things that people write words about, that doesn't really matter. The fact that there are different audiences for different kinds of words. If you write a physics textbook, a high-level physics textbook, you know that the audience for that is limited. You're not worried about the fact that people who don't understand these concepts might pick it up and be confused. But when it comes to sacred writings, when it comes to holy books, which are meant to be consumed by everyone, which are meant to be read by everyone equally, there's a problem of audience. And the problem is that not everyone is at the same degree of understanding. And so who are you addressing? Who is your audience if you're the prophet and you have a certain message and you know that message is multifaceted and you know that there are different levels to it? What sort of language do you use to express yourself? Anyway, just to encapsulate what this problem of language is, this is from one of the Platonic dialogues, the Phaedrus. And this is Socrates speaking. He says, Phaedrus, that's the strange thing about writing, which makes it truly analogous to painting. The painter's products stand before us as though they were alive, but if you question them, they maintain a most majestic silence. It is the same with written words. They seem to talk to you as though they were intelligent, but if you ask them anything about what they say, from a desire to be instructed, they go on telling you just the same thing forever. And once a thing is put in writing, the composition, whatever it may be, drifts all over the place, getting into the hands not only of those who understand it, but equally of those who have no business with it. It doesn't know how to address the right people and not address the wrong. And when it is ill-treated and unfairly abused, it always needs its parent to come to its help, being unable to defend or help itself. And Phaedrus says, once again, Socrates, you are perfectly right. So, in a way, this is a challenge that the prophets throughout the ages have found a way of addressing that really uniquely distinguishes the revelation from other kinds of words. Other kinds of words are written to a particular audience, but somehow the prophets are able to speak in a way that everyone gets something out of it. Everyone takes something away from it. And what some people take away from it may be very different from what other people take away from it. And I think that's happening here, particularly, and I think that's one of the major messages of the tablets in this volume. And it's also, I think, a subtext of the first work in this volume, the Rashiama, this poem of 19 or in some cases 20 couplets that Baha'u'llah revealed in late 1852, in which he's describing something from two points of view simultaneously. And what he's describing is what can be and this is repeated in each of the couplets of the poem. What's describing is the raining down of something. It's the raining down of the Rashiama, which is a Persian word which roughly translates to a rash is a sprinkling or a raining down. It's a sort of a drifting down. It's not like a heavy rain, but it's like a mist, a falling mist. And ama is particularly difficult to translate. It perhaps literally means cloud, and so it's the sprinkling of the cloud. But it's not really a cloud in the sense of a cloud that brings rain. It's a cloud in a different sense. It's the cloud that obscures light and that obscures knowledge. it obscures the knowledge of that which is on the other side of the cloud. The Bab in one of his tablets describes the prophet as the primal veil. He says, above this veil there's only God, and beneath this veil you see everything emanating from God. There is the idea of the prophet being a mediator between that which is truly and permanently unknown and that which is known in the world. And that cloud is that which interposes between us and that ultimate realm of the unknowable. Abdu'l-Baha in one of his tablets describes this Amma, describes this cloud in the following terms, and it's a short explanation that's in the endnotes of the volume. He says, Amma is defined as an extremely thin and subtle cloud, seen and then not seen. For shouldst thou gaze with the utmost care, thou wouldst discern something, but as soon as thou dost look at it, it ceaseth to be seen. For this reason, in the usage of mystics who seek after truth, Amma signifieth the universal reality without individuations as such. For these individuations exist in the mode of uncompounded simplicity and oneness, and are not differentiated from the divine essence. Thus they are individuated and not individuated. This is the station alluded to by the terms ahadiyeh, absolute oneness, and Amma. This is the station of the hidden treasure mentioned in the hadith. And the hadith of the hidden treasure says, I was a hidden treasure and I love to be known, therefore I brought creation into being that I might become known. The divine attributes, therefore, are individuations that exist in the essence but are not differentiated therefrom. They are seen and then not seen. This, in brief, is what is meant by Amma. So this might just cloud things further, no pun intended. If one is not familiar with the whole technical terminology of philosophical Sufism, that makes a very important distinction between two different kinds of oneness. There's the oneness of, as the phrase here, of ahadiyeh, the oneness beyond the cloud, the undifferentiated oneness, which is not even oneness, which is even beyond the word oneness. And then there's the oneness below the cloud, the oneness of wahidiyah, the oneness which might be thought of as a unity of comprised of particulars, which is another kind of oneness, but it's a lower level of oneness. So Abdu'l-Baha associates this idea of the cloud with this idea of undifferentiated oneness. The idea of the cloud is also not unique. The idea of the mystical force and depth of the idea of a cloud as representative of divine unknowing was not invented by Baha'u'llah in this tablet. It goes back quite a long ways as well, and one of the most famous examples of this, and we don't know whether Baha'u'llah was aware of this or not, but there is actually a work written in Middle English sometime probably in the late 1300s called The Cloud of Unknowing, which is a spiritual handbook which is of the mystical tradition in Christianity. And somewhere in the middle of this handbook, we have a definition of the cloud, which we'll find is quite similar to in its own way, to the definition that Abdu'l-Baha gives about the cloud being something which is not seen. It's not something which is tangible. And this is what the author, the unknown author of the Cloud of Unknowing says. He says, "Do not think that because I call it a darkness or a cloud, it is the sort of cloud you see in the sky, or the kind of darkness you know at home when the light is out. That kind of darkness or cloud you can picture in your mind's eye in the height of summer, just as in the depth of a winter's night you can picture a clear and shining light. I do not mean this at all. By darkness I mean a lack of knowing, just as anything that you do not know or may have forgotten may be said to be dark for you cannot see it with your inward eye. For this reason it is called a cloud, not of the sky, of course, but of unknowing, a cloud of unknowing between you and your God." So an alternative title for this tablet of Baha'u'llah's may have been the sprinkling of the cloud of unknowing. and I think would have been, there's so many ways that this could have been translated, and there's so many ways that this entire work could have been translated. And the translation attempts, I think, to capture the impossible mean, the impossible balance point between, on the one extreme, translating just quite literally, word for word, everything that's said, and on the opposite extreme, just going for poetry and just trying to translate it in meter with rhyme, and make it as beautiful as possible. And translators, not just of poetry, but in general of the writings, of the Baha'i writings, and of course beyond, are faced with this dilemma. You know, am I going to go the literal route? And there's a school of thought that says, well, it's not faithful unless it's as literal as possible. But especially with poetry, if you go as literal as possible, then you lose all the poetry. And the point of this is that it's a poem. And so the translation has to preserve some of the poetry of the original. And you can't hit both of them at the same time. And so there's compromises that have to be made in both directions, especially if you're striking to hit somewhere in the middle. And the compromise that was made in this translation was more or less to make it metered, but a kind of blank verse where it's not rhymed, because the original has a lot of rhyme in it, as we'll see, but the translation doesn't attempt to rhyme, but it does attempt to put it in a fairly regular meter, iambic of 7 or 8 feet per couplet. But it's an irregular iambic because the original also is not an irregular metrical meter either. But there's an attempt to cast it into this poetic form. So, for example, in the opening 2 lines, "'Tis from our rapture that the clouds of realms above are raining down." You can count the feet on your finger, and you get 8 feet. "'Tis from our anthem that the mysteries of faith are raining down." So it's iambic octameter, I suppose you could say, is the base meter. But sometimes you find 7 feet, and sometimes you find these stutter steps where it's not exactly in the iambic meter. The original tablet is written in Arabic. Sorry, that's a Freudian slip. It's actually written in Persian, but almost every word of it is Arabic. So, and Baha'u'llah does this in many of his tablets, where grammatically it's Persian, and there are, of course, a number of Persian words in here, but most of the significant words are of Arabic origin. So much so that the commentary on the Rash al-Amma written by Dr. Rafati some years ago, that also for the Persian speakers provides a pretty good Persian text of the tablet. If you have it, I can photocopy this for you. It provides not just the text of the tablet, but almost a glossary where verse by verse Dr. Rafati comments on it, and almost word by word he explains for the Persian readers what these various words mean. So it's difficult in that you really need to be fairly conversant in 2 different languages to understand it. Baha'u'llah in this poem, you could say the overall theme is describing this raining down of divine grace that he experienced while he was in the Siyat Shal. Many years later, he described that experience in the following terms. And when you hear this description and then listen to the words of the poem, I think you will you'll definitely see how one is an expansion of the other. He writes, "During the days I lay in the prison of Tehran, though the galling weight of the chains and the stench-filled air allowed me but little sleep, still in those infrequent moments of slumber, I felt as if something flowed from the crown of my head over my breast, even as a mighty torrent that precipiteth itself upon the earth from the summit of a lofty mountain. Every limb of my body would, as a result, be set afire. At such moments, my tongue recited what no man could bear to hear." And the introduction goes on to say, the poetic reflection of that experience as conveyed in Rashi Alma can perhaps never be adequately rendered into another language, yet the present translation is an initial attempt to impart a glimpse of its power and momentous themes. So, and people for a long time felt and believed that this poem would just forever be untranslated. And there were some who felt that it should remain so. But the House of Justice decided to allow this to be included in the volume, and but with this caveat that this is just an initial attempt. And I think it's fair to say that the Fitzgerald of the Baha'i writings is yet to be born. You know, Fitzgerald who famously transformed the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam into this incredible work in English, which is a standalone piece, which is sometimes related to the original. But if you try to map it word for word, phrase for phrase, you will may be disappointed, because it's not so much a translation as much as a transformation. But it fully captures the spirit of the original. It's an example of that extreme end of going for the spirit and not worrying too much about the literal, the word for word meaning. Not saying that is. I'm wondering and would speculate whether different translations of this particular poem might eventually come out and be used for different purposes, even within the Baha'i community. There's a tradition of having just one authorized translation that everybody uses. I don't know if it might be the case that a poem like this could be an exception, where there might be a use for more literal versions for people who want to see it through that lens, as well as less literal versions for people who want to experience it as poetry. So I mentioned that the poem is in Persian, and many of the terms are in Arabic, and a lot of these Arabic terms are referencing at one and the same time Quranic allusions to the prophecies about the day of God and the coming revelation that are embedded within the Quran. So there are quite a number of elements of prophetic expectation and fulfillment within this poem. At the same time, one finds that all of these Arabic words taken together constitute almost a lexicon of the mystical dimension of Baha'u'llah's writings, and foreshadows many of the major themes that Baha'u'llah's revelation will center around in the years to come. And so it's almost word for word. You can pull out several dozen of these Arabic words that Baha'u'llah references in this tablet, and many of them form central themes in later works of Baha'u'llah. And we'll touch on some of these as we go through the poem, and we'll see, of course, quite obviously to us, perhaps maybe less obviously to those who read it at the time and had access to it at the time. Baha'u'llah is at one and the same time claiming but not claiming. It's written in two languages simultaneously. He's talking about the receipt of grace from above and the experience of this flowing down, almost like water, of the celestial bounties, and that's the one message. And the parallel message is that he himself is the source of this, and so he's both the recipient and the source, and so the who's the subject and who's the object, it ends up becoming dissolved into one in this poem. And that's one of the curious things about it. And that also is one of the things that explains why the opening verses were translated as they were. one can translate all of these verses in different ways, and oftentimes very much where you place the phrase determines where the emphasis lies. And in the opening lines, "'Tis from our rapture that the clouds of realms above are raining down. 'Tis from our anthem that the mysteries of faith are raining down," already sounds this theme that it's from Baha'u'llah's rapture that this is happening. It's Baha'u'llah's song that is the source of this grace. At the same time, it's coming from other than him personally, but the opening phrase emphasizes the source of it in some sense as being Baha'u'llah. The opening words in the Persian Rashe Ama as Jazbe-ye ma mirizad, Ser-e Wafa as Nagme-ye ma mirizad. The mirizad is this raining down, and every line of the poem ends with mirizad, and that has been faithfully translated as raining down. So every line ending captures that mirizad by ending raining down. The second line of it, as bad saba mishke khata gashte padid, va in nafhe khush as ja'de ma mirizad, which is translated, upon the eastern wind Cathay's entrancing musk doth waft, the sweetly scented breeze from our curling locks is raining down. And it's interesting that Baha'u'llah references China in the second verse of this, and the musk of Cathay, which to my mind emphasizes a theme of Baha'u'llah's revelation that this is the tree neither of the east nor of the west, and the reference to this, perhaps a reference to the wisdom of the mystic East, which is equally a part of this revelation. And in the second line, the sweetly scented breeze from our curling locks is raining down. Baha'u'llah very often in his tablets refers to his locks, his hair, as a source of some mystical potency, in a way, and he often references the sweet savors of those locks. There's a body of tablets that Baha'u'llah revealed, perhaps during the same time, called Tablets of the Hair. And there's several of these short little tablets where he describes in mystical terms his own hair. And these were, so you might not have seen these. These are sort of lesser known works of Baha'u'llah. These were published in Baha'i News in 1938 or 1939, and to my knowledge, not subsequently republished. And so these are kind of early translations of these fascinating short tablets of Baha'u'llah about the mystical significance and potency of his hair. So one of them goes like this: He is the Almighty. My hair is my ambassador, proclaiming at every moment upon the branch of fire in the rose garden of holiness and light. Perchance the people of the world become severed from the dust soaring towards the seat of nearness, the station wherein the light emanated from the beauty of God, the mighty, the unconstrained. O thou, ye servants of fire, sing and praise, then become rejoiced and hasten ye toward the adored one, while crying, there is no God but God, the knowing, the wise, the loving. And then another of these short tablets: My hair is my fire, therefore it is enthroned upon the seat of my cheek, and is pasturing upon the rose garden of my face. This is the station wherein the son of Imran stripped from himself the garment of all save him, and attained to the lights of holiness from the fire of God, the powerful, the mighty, the forgiving. There's several of these, but it's interesting how the metaphor of fire is often intertwined, no pun intended, with the curling locks of his hair. So in the third verse, he says, Shamse taraz az talat haq karde tolu, serre haqiqat bin ka az vajhe sa mirizad. or the day star of adornment hath dawned forth above the face of God. Behold that mystic truth which from his countenance is raining down. And in this verse, as in a number of other verses, Baha'u'llah is referencing particular letters of the alphabet, but to translate it literally would just lead to all sorts of confusion. And so there's some a degree of interpretation by the translators involved. Literally, he's saying this, behold the mystic truth, which from the face of Tha is raining down. The face of the letter TH. In Persian, it's pronounced Sa, in Arabic, Tha. And according to Dr. Rafati's commentary, that letter TH refers to possibly two different things. It refers to the word samare, or thamare in Arabic, which means fruit. And there are tablets of the Bab and of Baha'u'llah which refer to himself as the fruit, as the fruit of the tree of being, or the fruit being the highest expression of the potentiality of the tree. And this is one of the titles of Baha'u'llah and that the Bab assigns to himself. It also refers to the word three in Arabic, and the reference here is to the fact that the Bab's name, Ali Muhammad, is comprised of three letters. And so by referring to the face of Tha, it's saying the face of the three, or the face of the three letters, which is another way of referring to himself. And Baha'u'llah, in referencing this, is giving a double entendre. He's referring to the Bab, because the Bab's name was Ali, but Baha'u'llah's name was also Ali, Mirza Hussein Ali. And so Baha'u'llah is referring at one and the same time to the Bab and to himself by referring to the face of the three, or the face of Sa. So that's just one example of how there's all sorts of allusions that just are not can't be captured in the original. In the fourth line, Bahr Safa as Moj Laqa Karde Khurush va in Torfa Ata as Jazbe Ma Mirizad. So we hear again this Jazbe Ma, the rapture, is referenced several times in this poem, as Baha'u'llah is carried away by the rapture and ecstasy of this sprinkling of the cloud. What's happening in the first half of this line, he's referring to the wave of true reunion, the Moj Laqa. And Laqa is translated here as true reunion. And in the Kitab-i-Gan, it's translated as attainment to the divine presence, which is one of the central themes of the second part of the Kitab-i-Gan, or the Book of Certitude. So this wave of true reunion is referring to the wave of the meeting with God, which is freighted with meaning, deriving back to the Quran, and the mystery and the challenge is that the orthodox reading of the Quran and this term liqa led some to believe that the day of God, which is foretold in the Quran, which is also foretold in another way in the Bible, will mean that everyone will meet the promised one when he arrives. This liqa is a physical meeting, and so it requires the Prophet to be seen to everyone physically, and to be sort of there among the people. And this was a challenge, particularly when the Bab was executed a few years after his declaration of his mission. And the uncle of the Bab wrote to Baha'u'llah, and the Kitab-i-Gan was written as a result. And one of the central questions was, well, how can we have a meeting? How can this liqa take place? How can the attainment of the divine presence take place when the Prophet has already passed on to the next world and nobody has access to it, to him? And so a great part of the Kitab-i-Gan is taken up with describing how this meeting can nevertheless take place in the spiritual realm. So just another example of words that have a great deal of implication and that are expanded upon greatly in the years that follow. The fifth couplet of the Rashayama in most of the existing manuscripts does not exist. So most of the Persian texts of the Rashayama only contain 19 lines, but a few of the texts, including the one that the research department based its translation on, contains 20. And that extra couplet is this line 5 right here. It goes, Ganje Hob dar sine fa gashte nahan zain ganje mahabat dore vafa mirizad. Or the treasuries of love lay hid within the very heart of Fars. And Fars, this Dore, this heart of Fars is the land of Persia. Fars is the Farsi, the first letter, when that's referred to, is clearly referring to his home country of Persia. From out this treasure trove, the pearls of faithfulness are raining down. And in the 6th line, Behjate mol az nazre gol shod zahir, in ramzi malik az ranne ra mirizad. Or the splendor of the rose doth bring the ecstasy of choicest wine. This subtle music from the ringing tones of lordship is raining down. And ringing tones of lord, I love how it refers, to a flower and wine and music sort of all pulled together. These are very common themes in Sufi poetry, and Baha'u'llah is bringing them all together in this one line. And he's referring to this Ranne Ra, this song of Ra. And again, this is where, if you translated it literally, it would be the ringing tones of Ra. Well, what are the ringing tones of Ra? It would require footnotes, and as you can see, there are no footnotes in this tablet. You're sort of left to your own devices to, as a reader, to figure out what it means. Although certainly, every line of this could be commented upon intensely. But oftentimes, the letter Ra is a reference to Robubiyat, or lordship. And the assumption here is that the Rane Ra are the ringing tones of lordship, which is one of the stations of the prophet. In the 7th line, Nakre Nahuri Jazbeye Lahuti in Hardo be yek nafche as Jave Sama Mirizad. And this brings a lovely juxtaposition. The trumpet blast of judgment day, the joyful bliss of heaven's call, both at a single breath are from the firmament now raining down. So you get both the judgment day, the sort of the fire and brimstone, as well as the joyful bliss of heaven's call. Both the sort of the good and the bad are coming at the same time. It's bad in one sense because it's going to disintegrate an old order, but it's at the same time presaging the bliss of the kingdom of God on earth. In the 8th line, Dore anahu ma karde boruz, kore huvahu as tafeye ba mirizad. Or the day of I am he, anahu, is made to shine resplendent from our face. So Baha'u'llah here is referencing one of the great challenging and sometimes fatal proclamations of the mystics, of saying, I am God. And so he's saying this day of I am he, and the he here is God, he said, is shining resplendent from our face. So in retrospect, it's really obvious what he's doing. He's making a prophetic claim, but it's garbed in the kind of language that you can say, oh well, Al-Hallaj said that centuries before. He was one of the Sufi saints who famously said Ana al-Haq, or I am the truth, I am the true one, and was martyred for that. And but this is one of the challenging truths of the prophet, which is just as much the same challenge which is issued in the opening verses of the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. There's an identity and at the same time a distinction. It is something which proceeds from God and is therefore separate from it, but it is at the same time an incarnation of the thing, and therefore cannot be separated from it. So Baha'u'llah is referring to these both in the first half of this couplet, saying, the day of I am He, and the age of He is He, from our flowing cup is raining down. And this huvahu, also, which might just seem like a tautology, is another statement of that same kind of mystic unity, which is the subject of the Lohe Nahus of Baha'u'llah, or the Tablet of the Bell, which was translated in Days of Remembrance and published just a few years ago. And that's an ecstatic, another poetic tablet of Baha'u'llah that the refrain which just keeps repeating this, saying, praise be to thee, O thou who art He, O thou besides whom there is none but thee. Subhanaka Yahu, Ya Man, Ya Man Hua Hu, Ya Man Leisa Ahadon Elohu, which literally translates as to praise be to thee, O He, O thou who art He, O thou besides whom there is none but He. And that He, of course, is the same as the I. There's a mystical unity between the two. In the next line, the ninth line, Kosere haq as hoqeye del gashte hoveda in sagere shahd as la'le baha mirizad. Or from out the fountain of our heart hath God's celestial river flowed. This cup of honeyed nectar from our ruby lips is raining down. Here Baha'u'llah, directly claiming to be the source of this Rash Amma in this line. Yom Choda as Jelve Rab Shod Kamel in Naqs Hadis as Ghanne Ta Mirizad. Or the day of God hath been fulfilled, for lo, the Lord hath been unveiled. This wondrous message from the melody of Ta is raining down. And here the melody of Ta, a lot of us can guess what the melody of Ta is. Any guesses? Ta is Tehran, right? So we have Fa referring to Persia, and Ta, in all likelihood, referring to Tehran, which is where this poem was revealed, in the dungeon of the Siyah-Chal in Tehran. So a lot of letters, you could assemble a lot of the letters that are referred to, and that some of which were interpolated, translated for the translation, and some were left in letter form when it was felt that enough people would understand it if it was just translated as the letter, and that's the case with Ta. In the next verse 11, Tafe Baha'i bin, Rashe Ama'i bin, Kain Jomle az yek nagme as lahne Khoda mirizad. Behold, Baha's outpouring grace, the bounty of the clouds above. And here he repeats the Rash Amma, which merged into a single song in God's own voice is raining down. So this merged into a single song. What's being merged into a single song is the outpouring grace of Baha, and his own grace, which is flowing out, is merged into the grace of the bounty of the clouds above. So another direct expression of this mystical unity of the prophet and the divine. In the next line, Mahiye sar mad bin, tal e monazah bin, sadre momarrad bin, Allah mirizad. Or behold the Lord's Leviathan. Literally, this is the fish, or the whale. It's the same whale that in the story of Jonah and the whale in the Bible. And the idea of this enormous fish that one is swallowed up in is the theme of it can be found in a variety of mystical literature. Behold the Lord's Leviathan, behold his sacred countenance. Behold the blessings of the heart that from his throne are raining down. Literally, that Ke Allah, that from his exalted throne are raining down. And then the next line, Nachleye tubabin, raneye vargabin, ganeye abhabin, ke az lam'e safa mirizad. Behold the palm of paradise, behold the warbling of the dove, behold the glorious hymns that in the purest light are raining down. And this line and the next line gives a great example of internal rhyme that no attempt was made to render it in English. But you have Raneye varga and the Raneye abha. It's almost it rhymes sort of syllable for syllable. And in the next line, this is line 14. Ahenge Iraqi bin, dafe Hejazi bin, kafe Elahi bin, ke az zarbe la mirizad. And you might have heard that internal rhyme between the dafe Hejazi and the kafe Elahi. This perhaps is the line that suffered the most in translation, because there's just so much behind it. Literally, it's the Ahenge Iraqi is the Iraqi song. So he's saying, behold the Iraqi song. I mean, especially nowadays, it gives a whole different set of connotations when you talk about an Iraqi song. But what it's referring to is, it ended up getting translated as soul entrancing song. And the Dafeye Hejazi is the drum of Hejaz, or the Hejaz being the Saudi Arabian peninsula. So Baha'u'llah here is referring to these oriental notes, and the beat of the drum. The Dafeye Hejazi is the Arabian drum, and then this, behold the sacred rhythms that from our hand are raining down. This kafe elahi bin, the kaf is the palm. So the kafe elahi is saying, behold the palm of the divine palm. And the implication is that it's striking the drum, and the striking of the drum is causing this drum beat, which is raining down. But what's raining down is the zarbeye la. It's impossible to translate. It's the beating of la. Well, what is la? La in Arabic means no. So he's saying it's from the striking of no that is raining down. Well, what is this referring to? It's just a word of pure negation, and what it's referring. It's pretty clear that this is referring to the shahada of the Muslims, La ilaha illallah wa Muhammadun Rasulullah, or there is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. The first article of faith of the Muslims, which begins with the word la. It begins with the word no. No God is there but God. And the mystics have had a field day with this, and entire treatises have been written on the meaning of the la, and the fact that it begins with negation and ends with affirmation, because you have to negate what is false before you can affirm what is true. And what ends up being negated for the Sufis is pretty much everything. All of our conceptions of the divine are part of the apparatus of superstition, which is passed down from generation to generation. And so another way of translating this, there were at least 8 or 9 other translations of the Rashi Amma that existed prior to this authorized translation. Most of them not published or not available on the internet. And there was one actually done by Marzieh Gale herself, who translated earlier the 7 Valleys and the 4 Valleys. And it's almost like a Fitzgeraldian translation. I mean, it has moments of sheer brilliance, but just didn't track closely enough to the original to be used. And her translation of this line, I feel, captures the Fitzgeraldian, in the Fitzgeraldian sense, the spirit of it better, but it couldn't be used in the translation. So again, the authorized translation goes, behold the soul entrancing song, behold the beating of the drum, behold the sacred rhythms that from our hand are raining down. the alternate translation by Marzi Gale. Hear ye from out Iraq the shout, from out Hejaz the singing air. Hear ye God's hand as it drums out, but God, no other God is there. Wow. So, wow, it's great. Unfortunately, it drops the raining down, and you have to have raining down at the end of every verse if you've decided that you're going to, faithfully translate Mirizad. There's no way you can get raining down from this. But it has this, you can hear the drum beat in it. It's like, it's a really inspired translation. Maybe someday something like this will be done where there'll be the ability to render it in slightly more loose terms, but that captures the spirit and the beat of it. So in the fifth line, talate lahu tibin, huriye ha hutibin, jalveye nasu tibin, ka aserde ama mirizad. Baha'u'llah here is referencing three of the realms that he also references in the seven valleys. It's behold the everlasting face, or the face of Lahut. Behold the chalice bearer's charm. Did I skip? Sorry. Behold the countenance divine. That's the countenance of Lahut. Behold the maid of paradise, and this is the maid of Hahut. And behold the grace upon the world, Javeye Nasut, which from our own presence is raining down. It literally means Serre Ama. It's from the secret of the cloud. It's raining down. And this is referencing Lahut, Hahut, Nasut are three of the five realms in traditional Sufi cosmology that delineates the hierarchy, the celestial hierarchy, from the Hahut, which is the realm of Ha, the letter H, which is also associated with the divine essence, because the letter H, this particular letter H, also begins the letter Hoviyat, which is the divine essence. So the top level, which is also the level of the Ama, the invisible beyond the cloud, is the Hahut. And then the next level down is the Lahut, which is the realm of the manifestation. And Baha'u'llah refers to both of these here. And then below that is the Jabarut, and below that is the Malakut, which is translated as oftentimes as the dominion and as the kingdom. When we talk about the kingdom of God, it's always the Malakut. And then the lowest realm is the realm of Nasut, which is the realm of the world, the grace upon the world. This follows the ringstone symbol pretty much. And the ringstone symbol has three tiers, which captures Hahut, and Lahut and Nasut, but then Malakut and Jabarut end up not being represented in the three tiers of the ringstone symbol. But in another way, the ringstone symbol captures the Trinity. I mean, it captures the three aspects of the divine, of the totally invisible, and then the sort of the manifestation of the invisible, and then, well, that's probably too much of a simplification, because the ringstone symbol also has a vertical line which captures more of the Holy Spirit aspect of the Trinity. So you have the Trinity is embedded in the ringstone symbol, but then there's that extra tier of the world below. So in the next verse, we're now on verse 16. Vajheye baghibin, chehreye saghibin, Reke zojajibin ke az kobe ma mirizad. Or behold the everlasting face, behold the chalice bearer's charm, behold the crystal draught that from our brimming cup is raining down. This kobe is, I had fun looking this up in the dictionary, and this will illustrate one of the challenges of the translator. In the context here, it's clear that kobe is a cup, because it's surrounded by the metaphor of the wine and the chalice bearer but sometimes if you're not lucky enough to be a native speaker, and you have to go to the dictionary to find out what is this word, sometimes the dictionary will send you in literally 10 different directions at the same time. So here's what Steingast says as to the possible definitions of kobe: an instrument with which anything is brayed, a mallet, a beetle, a clod breaker, a whip, a scourge, A drum formed of two kettles joined on their convex sides and covered with a skin played upon like a bagpipe. A wave of the sea, a vessel in which butter is separated from the milk, the name of an edible plant. So here it gets translated as our brimming cup. The next line, tashe musabin, baizeye baizabin, sineye sinabin, ke az kafe sana mirizad. Behold the fire of Moses. Obviously we're referring to the burning bush. See his hand that shineth white, referring to one of the miracles of Moses, where God said, take thy hand out of thy bosom, and it was shining white. And it was one of the miracles of Moses. Sineye sinabin, behold the heart of Sinai, from our hand all raining down. So gorgeous imagery from the Old Testament in this verse. Naleye mastan bin, halate bostan bin, jazbeye hastan bin, ka'az sahne laqab mirizad. Hear ye the sotted lover's sighs, or the drunken lover's sighs. Behold the garden blooming fair. Behold the bliss that from his presence in your midst is raining down. And here the garden blooming fair, it's a lovely translation of ha late bostan. A hall in Sufi terms is an ecstatic state. So it's an attempt of but it's the hall, it's the ecstasy of the garden. Behold the bliss of Jazbeye Hastan. It's really the bliss of Hastan. It's the bliss of true existence, which from his presence in your midst, which from the courtyard of the divine presence is raining down. In the next verse, Qonjeye ha'ibin, tarzeye ba'ibin, raneye or nazreye ha'ibin, as kelke baha mirizad. Behold the radiant face of Ha. Behold the beauteous robe of Ba. Behold the lordly grace that from our pen is raining down. This also captures something, no way of rendering this in English, but this gonje ha'i. A gonje is a rosebud, if I'm not mistaken. And the rosebud of Ha, well, what does that mean? The letter Ha in Persian actually looks like a miniature rosebud. It's a little. I wish I had think of it as like a circle with a little loop inside, but you can imagine it as so he's describing the rosebud of Ha. He's saying, look at that. And then this tarzeye ba'i is it was translated as beauteous robes of Ba, but tarz is more generally an adornment, and it also could imply like the tresses, again referring to Baha'u'llah's hair and the curl and his curling hair. So it also could be referring to the letter Ba. So the tarzeye ba'i is also the lock of the letter Ba, which looks like a lock of hair. The look of the letter B is a curling lock. So he's referring, but then of course at the same time he's referring to the Ha and the Ba, which is two letters of his own name. So it's another way of referring to his own divine station. And then behold the lordly grace that from our pen is raining down. In Rafati's version it says Raneye Fa'i, or the song of Fa, which again is the song of Persia. But in another manuscript it said Nazreye Ha'i, which is slightly different. And so there are slightly different versions actually of the Rashi Amma in different manuscripts, which probably cannot all be attributed to scribal error. And it's quite possible that Baha'u'llah himself, over the course of his ministry, tweaked it a little bit or made small revisions to it over the course of the years, which was also the case in other tablets that he wrote. The Surya Haikal is a particular example where Baha'u'llah would later revise one of his own works later on for different to suit different purposes. And then the final verse, Tafe zuhurast in Rashe tohurast in, ganne toyurast in, ke as eine fana mirizad. And here's just, it's almost like exclamation points. It sounds like in the Persian. He's saying, the vessel, and it was translated quite directly in English, the vessel of the advent this, the clouds of limpid waters these, the trill of songbirds this, from our fleeting wellspring raining down. And here the fleeting wellspring is the eine fana, and the eine is the wellspring. Fana is the state of mystical annihilation. Which is the seventh of the seven valleys, which will be the next tablet we look at starting next week, and the uttermost end of the mystical journey in the seven valleys. We'll find that there are stages beyond that. Is the stage of fana, the stage of annihilation, in which the egocentric self, is burned away, and nothing remains of the self. So it's appropriate that Baha'u'llah, ends, with all of these verses alluding to his own station as source of the Holy Spirit, as source of the divine bounties which are flowing into the world. He also he ends with this note of humility and nothingness. That it's from this. That's almost paradoxically, he's the source and he's also nothingness, which is no paradox at all when you think of the prophet as a channel, as a hollow reed from which the pith of self has been entirely blown out, so that it's able to sound those pure tones of the breath that's breathed through it. In that sense, the personality has been blown out, and which is that state, that spiritual state of fana, and it's only through attaining that state that one is able to resound with the mystical music and the mystical tones of the spirit. So that's one attempt at looking a little bit at the terminology behind the Rashi Amma, and getting a sense of there being quite a few extra layers behind it, and as you can see, it's not just for the sense of the divine that it gives, the immediate sense of, where else in history do we have of a prophet actually describing what it was like to receive the revelation that then, sparked their entire prophetic mission. This was the event that Baha'u'llah concealed for a decade, that later he announced in his declaration in Baghdad in 1863, and we have this very intimate portrayal of the inner experience of it. But we also have this almost preview of themes that were to occupy his revelation, not the social teachings, but the mystical, the theological themes that are central to his later mission are just about all at least touched upon in these few lines of the Rashi Amma. So that's all I had prepared on that. Any thoughts or reactions on this? Yeah.
Do you know if this poetry was written for any particular individual, or
no, we don't know. Probably we can't say. But in most cases, when a tablet was revealed in honor of a particular person, one normally knows because they're referenced, in the opening or something like that. With this, we don't know. Probably not. There are a number of other poems that Baha'u'llah wrote. This is only the first of a collection, maybe a dozen or so, 1 or 2 dozen poems that Baha'u'llah revealed, all in the early years, never in the Akka period, but all in the Baghdad period. And as far as I know, they are also not addressed to particular people, but they're just cast into the world in a sense.
But they were these poetry that he wrote, they were collected by his family. How did they kind of come together?
How did they come together?
Yeah.
Well, the same way all of his writings came together. They were preserved, and maybe that's why we have less of his writings preserved from this period, because a lot of people didn't know who he was, so they might not have thought, oh, this is worth keeping and treasuring and becoming a family heirloom, as was the case with his later writings. But I think early on, they were copied and preserved. The Rashi Amma itself actually exists in the hand of, there's a manuscript in the hand of Baha'u'llah that records the entirety of the poem. And it's from before Adrianople because his hand is not shaking. You can date Baha'u'llah at least to Adrianople when he was poisoned, and subsequently his hand had a characteristic tremor to it that's very identifiable in his manuscripts. And prior to that, his writing is also quite identifiable, but without the tremor. And there's a manuscript that is early, probably Baghdad period. And so Baha'u'llah himself was either recopying this. One wonders, how, when it was revealed in the Siyah Chal, did he have paper and pencil on hand? Probably not, given what we understand of the conditions. And so it would have been written down at some time, at some point later, and shared among the friends. But we don't have a lot of information about that.
I'm just wondering, on that verse where he speaks about the Iraq and all of that, was that maybe added on later on when he actually wrote it down in Baghdad? And I'm just wondering if some of the lines were added at that time.
Oh, maybe, but since he also mentions Hejaz and never went to Hejaz, I mean, it's not necessary.
Yeah, the term Iraq and Hejaz, in my recollection, often referred to
Arabic and Persian.
the places where
Yeah.
pilgrimage took place.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he has mentioned Iraq and Hejaz here, because these are places of spiritual pilgrimage,
Mm-hmm.
and hence he has kind of spiritually linked it with.
Yeah. It also may refer to Arabic and Persian. Although Iraq, Arabic today is spoken in Iraq. When you refer to Iraqi in this context, it may also refer to the two languages.
Also,
I'm not sure.
His hands were tied behind him during the time of his.
Yes, he was literally in chains and stocks, and so it
he
would have been impossible for him to write. So this would have been memorized and then written down later. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll continue next week, not with quite the intensity of reference to the original, but we'll go through the 7 valleys, I think, with a fairly deep dive, at least a valley a week, I suppose, at a maximum rate of 1 valley a week, because there's so many more tablets after that even. Yeah.
Next week is the first Sunday of the month.
Oh, is it?
So
Oh, right.
will we just do it the first Sunday?
Oh.
Yes.
Consult and see what.
Well, I'll send you an email.
Well, I have a suggestion.
Oh. Oh, yeah.
I have a suggestion. When it is the first day of the month on the Sunday, why don't we hold ours on the Saturday morning?
Because I couldn't come.
Possible or not?
Let them decide what they want.
That's
to do.
possible. Yeah, that's possible. I'll have to consult Command Central about that. Yeah.
I wanted to make a comment because I have a Western ear. I have not really studied Persian or Arabic or anything like that, and we're doing a review of the Persian hidden words, or the Persian hidden words, and when I hear the poetry that's in there, it does not sound like Western style poetry. And I don't think that it's ever possible to translate poetry as the Persian person hears it to the Western style of, English style poetry.
Yeah.
And so the translation is impossible.
Right.
Because what rhymes or what feels right in Persian poetry is completely different from what
Yeah.
feels right in Western poetry.
Yeah. Plus, fashions change. I mean, it was more fashionable a couple centuries ago to write English poetry in rhymed verse, and it's a lot less fashionable today. And when you look at most poetry that's written today, it's not rhymed. it's almost thought of as
But there's a lot of
trite,
alliteration.
you know.
Hip-hop rap.
Yeah,
Persian, there seems to be a lot of
but-
alliteration,
Yeah.
a lot of up and down volume. There's a different kind of singing.
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of the rhyme is internal. I pointed out a couple of instances, but yeah, it's not a direct, because the languages are different and histories are different. It's not a direct translation. That also makes it impossible to.
You know, the other thing, don't feel bad, because as Persian, I don't understand any of these. Yeah, it's pure Arabic.
Yeah, it's like almost every word is Arabic.
He opened it up pretty much today. I've read it many, many times, but he opened it up.
But there is something very magical about the way those words are put together.
Yes.
Yeah.
They just really
Yes.
affect your.
They resonate. Yeah.
They resonate
Yeah.
in a way, even if you don't understand the words perfectly.
That's right.
It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, I was also going to comment on that. I love the internal rhyming and the pacing and the cadence of the scripture, especially when you were reading it. It really alliterated, you know. It kind of conveyed a message that's very very, very, very beautiful, you know. It's only in that native tongue, you know. You can try your best to translate it best you can, but it's just going to hit differently when you like actually have that native tongue or like
Yeah.
understand that cadence and that pacing.
Yeah.
And you know, so it's very beautiful.
Yeah.
But
Thank
I
you.
think having those references in the back really help too, because a lot of when you're listening to poetry or a very literary piece, is that there's these other references, these other images that come up in your mind because it's referring to something very particular. Right now we're listening to a television series that's in Spanish, and there's all these references to Spanish history that I don't know. So there's clearly some things that I'm missing in their little jokes and so on because I don't have that background. So when you can give that, well, it's referring to this and this and this, you can kind of get a little bit more of that imagery that's part of the poetry as well.
I'd like to understand, I'm not sure, is this a Persian style of poetry using Arabic words? Is that what's going on?
It's definitely Baha'u'llah's style. Beyond that,
Elements?
no. Most Persian Sufi poetry would not have so much Arabic. Baha'u'llah really stacks his writings with Arabic. Even his non-poems, his Persian writings in general have a very high percentage of Arabic.
And the reason, you think? Any thoughts, Stephen?
It's
What's
because
going
it's
on?
most complete.
Well, yeah, Baha'u'llah has comments about the two. You know, he comments about the sweetness of the Persian, but the power of the Arabic, and the eloquence and the precision of the Arabic, and both of them are necessary in his, in his role as prophet. You know, he's conveying music at the same time. He is, at times, wanting to convey something precise and powerful and so he needs both the Arabic and the Persian. I don't know why he mixes so much Arabic words into the Persian. Perhaps it's to give it that extra sort of the sort of Quranic connotations of it. It elevates it into non-everyday Persian.
Also, was his audience more Arabic speaking than Persian speaking?
Well, his audience would have known Arabic because, at the time, learning the Quran was the foundation of school, and it's still to some extent today, although less so. And so I think the understanding Arabic was more prevalent than it is today. And so the issues that modern day Persians have in reading Rashi Amma are greater than they would have been when it was revealed a century and a half ago.
We're taking a class with my brother on Persian hidden words, and what he said is that the Persian language is because about beauty and majesty. Persian language is more the language of beauty, and Arabic the language of
Majesty, yeah. It's a good way of putting it, yeah.
I'm just thinking about poetry, the essence of poetry, and isn't it part of intention that we don't get caught up in the feathers and into the hidden wing? Takes us into the hidden wing. I feel sometimes that poetry, music, and art to prisons that get us caught up in the feathers.
And at the level of the wing, we soar. Yeah, thank you.
Could we hear it maybe all the way through in the Persian?
Do you want to hear it all the way?
Yes.
Can an actual Persian read it?
An actual person.
Okay. Friday, Bob? Okay.
No, no.
Yeah.
Could you sing it, please?
Yeah. Please chant it for us.
I'll play the guitar.
Could you maybe act it out?
He can read.
You could act it out.
You're together. There you go.
رشح اما از جذبه ما میریزد، سر وفا از نغمه ما میریزد. از باد صبا مشک خطا گشته پدید، وین نفحه خوش از جعده ما میریزد. شمس تراز از طلعت حق کرده طلوع، سر حقیقت بین که از وجهه سا میریزد. بحر صفا از موج لقا کرده خروش، وین طرفه عطا از جذبه ها میریزد. گنجینه حب در سینه فا گشته نهان، زین گنج محبت در وفا میریزد. بهجت مل از نظره گل شد ظاهر، این رمز ملیح از رنه ما میریزد. نقره ناقوری جذبه لاهوتی، این هر دو به یک نفخه از جو سما میریزد. دور اناالحق دور اناهو از چهره ما گشته بروز، کور هوهو از تفحه با میریزد. کوثر حق از حقه دل گشته هویدا، این ساغر شهد از لعل بها میریزد. یوم خدا از جلوه رب شد کامل، این نغز حدیث از غنه تا میریزد. تفح بهایی بین، رشح امایی بین، این جمله ز یک نغمه از لحن خدا میریزد. ماهی سرمد بین، طلع منزه بین، صدر ممرد بین که از عرش عطا میریزد. نخله طوبی بین، رنه ورقا بین، غنه ابها بین که از لمع صفا میریزد. آهنگ عراقی بین، دف حجازی بین، کف الهی بین که از سر اما میریزد. وجهه باقی بین، چهره ساقی بین، رق زجاجی بین که از کوبه ما میریزد. آتش موسی بین، بیضه بیضا بین، سینه سینا بین که از کف سنا میریزد. ناله مستان بین، حالت بستان بین، جذبه هستان بین که از صحن لقا میریزد. غنجه هایی بین، ترزه بایی بین، رنه فانی بین که از کلک بها میریزد. طرف ظهور است این، رشح ظهور است این، غن طیور است این که از عین